one fund to another, so fire and water had to pay back to wastewater a certain amount of money, and that's partially what's involved here also.
They got overpaid.
Yeah, or like sewer, we believe paid a bill out of sewer that water owed, but water was in the negative, so there was no money to pay, so it's kind of a tangled web, and as we line it out, all the bases have been covered, the money's been put back, these 3 accounts have been established so that you can count your reserves, because your restricted reserves, you can't just spend that money on anything, and that has happened in the past. Just go to the bank and pay the bill and then worry about where it comes from later, and that practice basically has to stop, because you find yourself getting in a situation where you can get audited and our audits start turning out bad, and then we're in a deficit. So all the accounts have been brought back up, all the money that, for the best we can figure, has been placed where it belongs. And light water obviously is the one that's running in the negative, everything else is in the positive. And so to reconcile that with the loan, it will be acted in a positive with the payback to lighting.
My only question with regards to how it would appear from getting a grant standpoint, we would be operational in the positive, but we would also be saddled water with a $200 financial obligation.
So the way the grants work is they basically, it's like getting a consumer loan. They're going to look at how much debt you have, what your annual revenue is, what your annual expenses are. And just like a consumer loan, if you have a huge debt to income ratio, they're gonna look at you sideways and tell you to go away.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we're operating in the negative, but we don't have this $200,000 financial obligation. It doesn't affect the credit to debt ratio. Yeah, we are operating in negative, but you have money coming in and money going out on a monthly basis. If you saddle that water department or water fund with this negative $200,000 loan, that's going to affect the credit to debt ratio maybe more than being in the negative.
Possibly.
And then I'd like to ask, what are we doing to cut costs? Because that would go hand in hand. If you're running in a deficit, is there something we can streamline or change to reduce our spending?
Well, every day, if there's something that we come across that we can do it a different way, that's gonna either last longer or be more efficient, then we try to do that. Obviously, we don't have 1,000 people here doing 1,000 different jobs. We have 4 people here doing 1,000 different jobs. So, some things are a little bit harder to accomplish than others, but both of our operators come up with ideas all the time on how to make things a little bit faster, a little bit easier, and things like that save time, which puts us onto other projects, which can get us done faster. Buying materials in bulk, or buying a little bit better materials that last longer. Maybe it's a little bit more upfront, but it lasts you 5 or 6 years, so there's cost savings out there. Not every cost saving is realized today, some of it's realized the next year or the year after. But we're doing that across the board. That's not just a water.
I'm going through our accounts constantly looking for things that we can, it's not much, but every little bit helps.
Right.
I'm down to the $25 bank charge that the bank charged us that I haven't given.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion?
I want to let you guys know that Rob and me and Darcia have worked on this mostly all week, and we have reconciled our accounts to the bank statement to the penny up to this month. So all of that stuff's been accounted for. Everything, and if you guys want to come in and look at these reports, we can walk you through them. I know they're very convoluted, but we can do that too.
Is there a motion?
Well, I have a question. If it's okay, if water is 160,000 and change in the rears, and they're operating in the negative, are they currently living a hand-to-mouth existence to where the money coming in is coming in as fast as it's going out, or where are they getting the operating capital to continue functioning? Where's this $160,000 placeholder floating around?
I think it's kind of a timeline where at some point you're gonna be 100,
Is it a current?
You're in the negative, so there's all the money's in one account, so.
So something is
Yeah.
funding it currently, it might as well,
Right,
be
you're
fulfilled
basically
and put
living
aside.
off of the other funds' money, but those other funds still have claim to the money. So you're living out of someone else's wallet, and you're still bringing money in.
so we're doing what you're asking to do without having asked to do it.
without legitimacy.
Well, as long as all your
Without
money, or
legitimacy.
your operating fund in the bank, that bank account has the 5 funds in it. Those 5 funds, all of their money is in that fund. You just have one fund that has no skin in the game, but spending money out of that fund. Now, you have an income, and you're paying your bills, so they're paying their bills out of the money that's coming in, that's being generated, they're just not,
They're digging the hole deeper every day though.
well, or they're sustaining, they're not going any deeper, but they're not coming out, or they're now coming out, because we've had to raise our rates, and as they come out, they'll be able to pay this loan back. But today, it's gonna take a while for that to happen. Today, they're 166, almost 167,000 in debt, where with the loan, they will be in the positive, they won't be digging into the other.
They won't
fund.
be 200,000 in the positive though, they'll only be
No.
34,000 in the positive.
No, they'll
Maybe 40.
be 67 to 200, so
33.
$33,000 to the
That's close.
positive.
Is there a motion?
My question would be, how can we motion to approve this if we don't know if we have to charge ourselves interest?
We can come back and modify the loan. You can always, add the terms, I mean, as long as we have the intent.
Well, so just so you know, what staff is asking is to authorize Rob to enter into a promissory note. So the terms haven't been decided yet. So you're just giving Rob the authority to execute the promissory note.
I will
So,
research
so
and find out.
we can revisit the interest rate soon. Alright? And you're saying that the terms of payback don't need to be discussed at the time of entering into a promissory note?
No, because that's not what the agenda item is asking. You're just you're giving Rob the authority to execute an agreement. So
With the
if the
district.
board's direction is to authorize Rob to explore terms of an agreement and bring it back to the board for approval prior to a signature, you could do that. But what's on the agenda right now, that's not what the board was being asked to do.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any urgency here because we're already doing what we're doing, are we not?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
we're
well,
basically at this
You
point.
just wanna make it legit, put it on paper.
So when we reconciled all these accounts to make this right, I'm trying to make the books right to where all your accounts are in the positive and you have cash to
I
operate on.
understand all that.
So what I can do is basically, as she said, come back to you with a couple options in terms of this agreement, but I need to have you guys say you want me to come up with some type of terms.
I'm still confused about the board giving you the authority to enter into an agreement for a promissory note when we're borrowing the money from ourselves, but yet we're still going through the practice of even without the loan. Did you follow that?
Well, from what I understand right now, the water department has 66,000 in its account. I don't know if that's water money or if that's a different.
Let me back up. Is there a consensus of the board to move forward or not?
If we can do it without running afoul of the law and the terms, especially with regards to interest rate, then, it's just clerical, so these things don't slide off into infinity.
Any comments?
You can also move to
Consensus?
continue this item until the terms are,
I'm getting to that.
okay.
I'm not opposed to it depending on the terms.
Okay.
Requirements.
So without knowing the terms, you'd rather.
I'd like to
Okay.
know what we're agreeing to.
Yeah, I agree with it too. If we do agree and consent with this, will the money be transferred right in, or will we wait for the terms and conditions?
All the terms and conditions would have to be done. You guys would make the decision on how much, the rate of pay, the time frame, the interest rate, all that would be done. And the last thing that would happen would be the transfer from lighting fund to water fund.
So, again, consensus from the board. I believe that we should be paying interest, because that's what I've been told you're supposed to do. Does everybody agree with that?
That's the law.
So we should determine an interest rate. And then the length of time, you're asking for 8 years, but I think that 4 years
So
should be more realistic with an annual update on how the payback is going, because there's nothing stopping us from doing all of this again.
It should be an 8-year term with no prepayment penalty.
8 years.
So you can pay double and pay it off in full.
So the only reason I suggested 8 is I did originally say 5 years.
I know why, because it's, you don't know what's gonna
And
happen this time.
the obligation annually was double.
Okay. So come back with terms.
Okay, cool.
We're gonna continue this item.
Please say it out for me.
We're gonna continue the item. The consensus of the board is to continue the item and bring it back with, loan terms, interest and, payment plan.
All in favor?
I,
Anybody opposed with continuing and bringing it back with loan interest in more detail? No. Okay, give us a minute to write
discuss
that
it.
down.
Discuss and approve ordinance 03-2019, San Miguel Community Service District Board of Directors adopting the San Miguel Community Service District wastewater code.
This is the second reading of the code that we read earlier.
We did that already.
If anybody has any questions or comments?
Is there any questions or comments?
can you read it again, please?
Would you like me to?
You have a question?
I have a question. So under, I'm trying to find this section, under new connections, the language was for industrial, new construction, industrial uses unless provided otherwise, correct?
I'm sorry, which,
That would be under, new connections.
Do you have a page number?
I'm trying to find the page number. I'm trying to go.
Do you have a page number on the board packet?
149.
Far right hand corner?
Thank you.
168? Mine was on 168. Great, I lost it.
Okay. Take
The-
your time.
it's new connections for commercial or industrial?
Well, it's both, because the question is, you have facilities that are industrial in nature, but are permitted as agriculture. So the question is, what happens to those facilities, such as Portside, which is an industrial facility for all intents and purposes, but it's zoned agriculture, it's considered agriculture and all that. So I'm just asking about any new facilities like that getting built in San Miguel, where does that fall in our sewer ordinance?
So it would be not necessarily what they're permitted as in the county, it would be what their waste is classified as. So if you're Portside Sellers and you're providing an industrial waste from an industrial product, then it's an industrial waste stream in our policy. If you're a commercial vendor and you're doing normal commercial activities and you're providing a generalized commercial waste from a restaurant or whatever, then that would fall under that. It would be looked at as far as what you're actually doing there, not necessarily what that property is zoned for.
Okay, because the theory, or I guess the hypothetical is that if someone decided to recreate a Portside Sellers facility in San Miguel, would they have to hook up to the sewer network in San Miguel? Or would they be allowed to have their own independent sewer plant on their property?
Well, the answer to that is no. So, number one, the state, unless they were well outside of our boundaries, the state would not allow them to build another treatment plant. At the most, they would be allowed to build pre-treatment, and then they would have to supply or send it to us.
Okay.
Or they would have to build an entirely separate treatment plant that meets all of the current regulations, and that would be extremely cost prohibitive.
So is this a pre-treatment plant that they have up the street here?
They have a actual treatment plant, it's permitted just like ours,
Right.
but if they were to do that today, that's not what they would have.
Oh, I see.
If they started that today, that would not be
Oh,
there.
okay.
Just like we're building our plant, that's not what we get, so.
Alright.
So for commercial entities, they cannot build a treatment plant? It has to be a pre-treatment?
So,
And then send it to us.
so for commercial entities, depending on what your commercial process is, if you're not making something that has a byproduct that we can't handle, then you don't have to have pre-treatment. If you're making a byproduct that potentially could come to our system, that would harm our system, you would have to have some sort of pre-treatment. Whether that's a small interceptor or that's some sort of large treatment vessel. There's a lot of places, especially in, well, all over, but especially in Santa Maria, that not Santa Maria, but LA area, where they have like chroming or anodizing. Those all processes all have a waste stream that's either high in pH or high in other chemicals. They would have to treat those before it goes to the waste stream.
Okay.
So, like at a restaurant, they have fats and oils. They have to have an interceptor to separate those out before it comes into our system. So that's their pre-treatment. So that's the type of thing that they would have to have commercially. If you're a regular business, you don't have to have that. Because regular bathrooms they shouldn't have that.
It's actually defined on page 159, item JJ, industrial wastewater, it gives you a definition.
Okay. Oh, and the section I was actually referring to, I found was PDF page 169, section 2, regulation sewer use, 2.1, use of public sewers required, section A, no building, industrial facility, or other structure shall be occupied unless until the owner of the premises is compliant with all district rules and regulations. So when it said the industrial building, that's what I was trying to get at, was that a county deemed industrial building, or that include agriculture? That was what I was originally getting at.
So just because you have an industrial building doesn't mean that it's on industrial or
Right.
industrial zone land, which is what quartzite is.
Mhm.
But the way we're looking at it and the way we've always looked at it is you are what you are. And
Right.
if you're a commercial space in a residential neighborhood, you're still a commercial space. So,
That was all I had.
Is there any public comment?